Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Take my brethren the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath. But let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he have committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. And it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins.
Welcome, everybody, to another reading of the Divine Program of the World's History on this beautiful Monday. We have a May 27th day today, and I am out here in the middle of Minnesota visiting my mother. She had a hot water heater go bad, and I'm out here fixing her problems. Stayed overnight, and I set up my computer here in the garage with the garage door open, and I'm looking over nice, beautiful plains right now. And it's a little cloudy and rainy and cool, but hey, I'm just perfect with that. I'm just doing great. And Jörg, how are you doing over there in Belgium?
Well, you cannot imagine, Bret, how envious you made me when you just told me about sitting in the garage looking outside on that wonderful landscape. Because
man.
I know from pictures that you took in the past what it looks like over there. And that must be so wonderful to be there. And instead of that, I am caught in this Antichrist Belgium Jesuit-led crappy system. Sorry, really. Yeah. We just had the elections yesterday. I am so sick, you know. Yeah. Oh, and then you are saying, well, I'm sitting here in the garage, out in the open and free, and I look on the landscape, and I can just imagine how peacefully, how wonderful that must be. And I'm just sitting here and saying, I have no way getting out of this box. But,
No.
you know...
Not for the moment, right?
Hey, brother, thanks for the Lord. He will take us out of every system. He is
right.
He is our rest. He is our peace. He is our freedom. It is the freedom with which He set us free, that we can still try to enjoy our lives, our days here. And I enjoy every day the more or the better. How do you say that? If I have the possibility to work in the Lord and to do a recording with you, wonderful brother in the United States of America there, I'm so looking forward to go back into that book. After last time, our last discussion led us into making an scheduled more or less video on the King James, and now we are really going back into this book of Albert Close, which is called The Divine Program of the World's History, the picture you see right here. It is a book compiled of the writings of many people like Henry Gretton Guinness, E.B. Elliot, Wordsworth, and some others, and of course Albert Close himself. And I'm really looking forward to get back into the book, Bret. And if it's all right with you, without any further ado, I would really love to pick it up today.
Please, let's go.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Let's go. So, I hope you can read the screen fine, because...
I can, yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's good.
Perfect.
So, it is still under the subchapter, The Puritans and the High Church, the founders of the United States of America. Now, before I even start this reading, you have to understand that if you want to really know the nitty-gritty, the absolute details of the founders of the United States of America, you have to go to two different other books. So even though I said I wanted to start, no, it's not for yet. I'm picking up something else. I want to show to you two pictures that I absolutely advise, of books that I absolutely advise people to read in the understanding of the founding of the United States of America. One is this book from Frederick Tupper Saucy, Rulers of Evil. It was written between the end of the 1980s and the midst of the 1990s, published in the end 1990s, begin 2001. The author died in 2006, a premature death. You can do your own research, what you think about that. I have my mind made up on that. I read that book on my YouTube channel a few years ago, and actually, on the one hand, I'm glad that I read it. On the other hand, it's a shame that I read it, because if I reread it now, with what I know now, I could do a much better job. Yeah, I'm rereading the book now in 2019, because I'm rereading it now in German, because a wonderful brother in Christ translated, or multiple two actually, translated the complete book of more than 340 pages into the German language. And just yesterday I did the 22nd session in chapter 11 and chapter 12 of Rulers of Evil.
Comment.
Yeah, please, Bret.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you did a set of videos on a breakdown of each couple chapters or something, wasn't it?
In German, I did a summary. Yeah. I did a summary after the English reading. Yeah.
Right. So this is that's really going into more detail. Then that's great.
Yeah, the summary. I was planning, after I have read the English book, I wanted to make a summary for the English book, and I had a German brother who asked me if I would do if I could do a summary in German. So everything that I prepared to do a summary in English of, I sent him, and he translated into German, and I made 13 videos out of that. And those have been very, 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 very well accepted in Germany, very well received, I wanted to say, very well received. I think altogether they have more than 30,000 or 40,000 views, these 13 videos, really very nice ones. Or at least much more than 20, between 20 and 30,000 views, I think, in the meantime. But now there are two German brothers, and especially the one who did Behind the Dictators already in German, Victor, who did a wonderful, wonderful job, really fine-tuning the translation. That the other one, he just took Google Translator and didn't care too much for what it comes out of there. And Victor really fine-tuned the whole book and is doing a wonderful, fantastic job in translating the complete book, Rulers of Evil, into German. And that's what I'm reading for the moment every Sunday night on Skype, together with a few guys like you and I are here connected together.
Great.
I do a reading, and I'm always yesterday there was Victor with me, the guy who translated that, and Michael, who you also know, who did some recordings with us, and they then complete me and do questions and comments together with me, and so with our three we do the reading of the Rulers of Evil book. But let's not go too much into detail. So the point is that Rulers of Evil by Frederick Tupper Saucy is a book that you absolutely should read if you want to know about the founding of the United States of America. And next to this book, Rulers of Evil, there's another one. And that one is maybe one that you haven't heard of, even though I spoke of it, I think. Okay, let's just see how I save that. That is a book by a author who goes by the name J. Moss Ives, and the title of the book is The Ark and the Dove, The Beginning of Civil and Religious Liberties in America. He speaks of two ships coming to the shores of the New World, setting sail in 1633 in Old England and coming to the shores of America in March, I think, in 1634. And these two ships were filled with Roman Catholics, filled with Jesuits, but also with Protestants. And it was interesting to read that book because I personally never read that book, but Tom Friess did on Inquisition Update. In the beginning of the year 2010, he read that complete book and he discussed that book, and it is very, very interesting to follow what Tom Friess read there, because he says that this is a book by a Roman Catholic written for Roman Catholics. So you have to stand very fast in the Bible, very secure in the Bible, before you get to read that book, because otherwise you will always take it with a wrong grain of salt. And this book is departed in three parts, 3 books, so-called. One is the one is the sowing of the seeds, one is the cultivating, and the third one is the reaping. Yeah, and especially that last one, the harvest or the reaping, that last book deals with things that you have never ever heard before, and it is a book that is really not very popular out there. And if you want to get it, well, you can buy the book and you can read it for yourself. It is not available as an electronic book, means it is not available as a PDF at least, maybe as an ebook, I don't know, in Google, but you don't have a PDF book on archive or whatever. But you can always go to the archives of First Amendment Radio and listen to Tom Friess read this book in 2010. That's what I did. And I was so under the impression when I heard him reading that book, and he also read Rulers of Evil about the same time, even before. And when you combine what is written in The Ark and the Dove and in Rulers of Evil, you get a picture of American history as you have never ever had before. Let me assure you that. It is wonderful. So, we are going into the Founding Fathers and the founding of the United States of America here in the book of the Divine Program, the founders of the United States of America. But if you really want to get into that, you should read what we are reading now together with these 2 books, The Ark and the Dove and Rulers of Evil. Yeah, sure, I'm just taking here another picture.
Please do.
You have here the Ark and the Dove. This is the 2 ships that arrived there in Maryland, of course, in 1634. And here is another picture that is the coat of arms, you can say, of the Society of the Ark and Dove, because they, of course, founded a Freemasonic society, which this is the coat of arms for. And here you have a website of them also, the Society of the Ark and the Dove. You can find that on the internet. But you will never, ever, of course, get real Protestant information from that like you are getting from us while we are reading this stuff here. Anyway, please, Bret, I look forward to your comment.
Oh, I was just going to quick say it's just such a shame that we can't, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't get Tom Friess's reading of The Ark and the Dove on YouTube, can we?
Yes, we can.
Oh, it's there? Oh, it's there.
No, it's not there. But you and I, we have the archives.
Oh, yeah,
we have the audios. We can make videos of that, and we can put that out there. We can put that out there when we do
very worthy project. Yes.
Yeah, when we do a copyright notice in there, because the usual original rights are with Nicholas Arthur from First Amendment Radio on YouTube. But I think that if we use the copyright note that this is for education only, and
well, that's something to put on the back burner and think about, because that takes a lot of time, and we got our stakes in the fire already. But I'm just saying, it's a shame that we can't do it right now, this very moment. That's all. It's a shame. I don't think Nicholas Arthur put it up, did he?
Not yet.
No, I don't think so. No,
not yet. There's a lot of things he didn't put up yet, but
right. Yeah, that's true. But so be it. I mean, people can always go and get a subscription to First Amendment Radio and then have access to the archives, and I have that myself.
Yeah.
So I would recommend everyone do that if they really want to hear Tom Friess read that book, and it's worth it. Believe me.
Oh yeah.
Tom's done a lot of research, man. And I got to take hats off to Tom here. That's an amazing reading he did. And, I still haven't taken the time to listen to that, Jörg.
So you don't know what you're talking about anyway.
Well, not the way you do. That's right, brother. So, no, I'll have to get on the stick and get it done. Yeah, just like anything else,
This is the guy we are talking about. I mean, not in the picture, because this is Pope Francis, but Inquisition update. The process is not over. This is what we are talking about when we speak about Tom Friess, He's a very, very dear friend and brother of ours, and we, how do I say that? We
support him.
Yeah, we support him all the way, and we love him, and we sustain him every way that we can. And,
that's right. And the message of the Tom has done a lot of very, very hard soul searching on this topic of Romanism, because let's face it, we all have friends that are very committed Roman Catholics. In one time or another in our lives, we've had friends that have been very committed to the faith. And, coming from a Protestant Lutheran background myself, we're a lot closer to that faith than we recognize. So, hats off to Tom Friess. Inquisition update.
Yeah. So let's start with the book, but take note of the advice that I gave you to read those books, or to go to the archives of First Amendment Radio and listen to, by the way, Tom Friess did read Rulers of Evil on First Amendment Radio, and you can find that reading in the playlists of First Amendment Radio's YouTube channel already. Nicholas Arthur put that up. The Ark and the Dove you can find in the archives when you support First Amendment Radio, and you will get access to the archives. You can pull that out there and listen to it for yourself. First, Rulers of Evil I read too on my channel, and there's a playlist also available on my video channel, Juggler66, where you have all these videos. I think 25, 26, 27 videos I did in the reading of the 25 chapters of Rulers of Evil. I didn't do as good a job as Tom did, of course, but I'm quite pleased with what I did. Of course, it would be much better, or it was much better if I redid it now in English, because it's about I think almost 4 years ago that I did it.
But Jörg, you know how they say, that the wine gets better with time. So
tell me as a wine merchant.
I mean, hey, don't rush it, man. That's my advice. Don't rush it. There's plenty of different material to go through.
Yeah.
And, that the reading you did, I greatly appreciate. I put it up on my channel, and I really dig it, man. You did a really great job.
Thanks.
You did.
So now let's go into this book. Now let's go into this job. The Founders of the United States of America by Albert Close in his book The Divine Program of the World's History. In 1620 AD, the Mayflower sails from England with the founders of the Protestant United States of America on board. The High Church Party and the Church of England drove these Puritans from England. So you have to understand the High Church Party, that is the hierarchy of the Anglican Church, drove this Puritans from England because the Puritans weren't there to make amends. They weren't there to compromise with the Anglican Church, which has a lot of Roman Catholic leaven in them. So the Puritans left from England at this time. They also left in the time of the persecution by Mary, and then at that time they went to Switzerland and they wrote their Bible there, the Geneva Bible, and that is the first Bible these Puritans, even in 1620, took with them when they came to the United States of America. It was the Geneva Bible they took with them first, and then of course a little later they also took the King James in there. Okay? The Puritans were the original founders of the Reformed Church in England at the Reformation. They fought hard to purify the national church from the degrading pagan rites and ceremonies which the so-called High Church Party persisted in retaining. Finally, they broke away from the national church entirely and became the founders of the great nonconformist body. The Puritans, who after a warfare against arbitrary power in England subverted the British monarchy and overturned the national church, laid in North America the foundation of the most mighty republic the world has ever known. Now, let me just add something to what the author says here. I don't want to break it down what he says here, I just want to add something. The Puritans overturned the national church and laid in North America the foundation of the most mighty colonies the world has ever known. Because when the colonies started forming the republic, and I know that I'm going to speak of things happening in the future, probably the author will deal with it, but I tell you right now, from my standpoint, my point of view, I cannot leave this sentence uncommented. When the 13 colonies turned into the United States of America Republic, they were set for doom, because they built that on the Constitution and on the Bill of Rights. And in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, what does it say? That there is religious liberty. And by that, the Roman Catholics had to gain everything, and the Protestants had to lose everything, and that's exactly the way it went. But you will see that when you read the Ark and the Dove, you will see that when you read Rulers of Evil, and you will probably see that when you continue reading with us the Divine Program of the World's History. Exiled from England during the reign of Bloody Mary, they returned on the accession of Elizabeth, bent upon the great design of extirpating from the Constitution of the Church of England what they deemed the last degrading vestiges of popery, and remodeling it after the doctrines and practices of the continental reformers. Now commands the stern and unrelenting struggle. The Church High Party, who were really Roman Catholics in doctrine, or in disguise, you can also say, and in many instances in disguise, okay, I didn't pre-read it, so I'm sorry. I didn't see that word standing there. I could have spared me my comment there.
Yeah.
The High Church Party, who were really Roman Catholics in doctrine and in many instances in disguise, resolved to admit no compromise. The Puritans, on the other hand, exposed to the utmost rage of persecution, could only oppose to it an indomitable firmness and tenacity. The Puritan or Low Church ministers, ejected from their livings, driven from their pulpits and their homes, began to travel the country and disseminate their views by preaching and issuing pamphlets in defiance of fine and imprisonment. When James I of England, James VI of Scotland, came to the throne in 1603 AD after the death of Queen Elizabeth, the Puritans lost no time in presenting to the king a petition signed by 825 ministers, praying for the removal of superstitious Roman Catholic usages, which the High Church party persisted in retaining, and other abuses which still deformed the national church. The memorable Hampton Court Conference was the reply, a conference in which James I browbeat the unfortunate Puritan ministers in the coarsest manner, encouraged by the sycophantic smiles of the High Church prelates and courtiers. "If you aim at a Scottish presbytery," he said, "it agrees as well with monarchy as God with the devil. I will have none of that. I will have one doctrine and one discipline." Rising from his chair, he added, "I shall make them conform themselves, or I will harry them out of the land, or yet do worse." Denied the religious liberty they sought in England, many of the Puritans fled to Holland, and from that country made their way or passage to America. Their voyage in the Mayflower marked the commencement of the mighty development of civil and religious freedom existing in North America today. After tossing on the Atlantic in their small and crowded vessel for more than 2 months, the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock on the 25th of December 1620. Here the low sandhills of Cape Cod, covered with scrubby woods that descended to the sea, seemed at the first glance a perfect paradise to verdure to the poor sea-beat wanderers. Before entering the harbor, they subscribed their names to a covenant as follows, quote, "Having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern part of Virginia, we do solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and of one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience." Unquote. Now let me take a sip of my coffee, please. Otherwise it's getting cold.
Great. Yes.
The Westminster divines declare the Pope the Antichrist. The hand of God is now seen in this covenant, guiding events to nobler issues than had been contemplated even by the best of men. American writers have denominated this voluntarily agreement, quote, "the birth of popular constitutional liberty," unquote. And though it was no intention of the Pilgrims to cast off subjection to England, they did practically by giving every man the right of voting and choosing officers to draw up and carry out the laws of the colony, lay the foundation of a totally new system of government upon the basis of a democratic equality and practical independence, over which the nominal sway of a distant power could never exert any efficient permanent control. A further settlement of Puritan Pilgrims in Massachusetts in the time of Charles I formed a later stage in the planting of American colonization, like the Pilgrims of 1620. These had been driven forth from their native country by the intolerable burdens of enforced conformity. The Puritans fought the first battle with the High Church Romanizing party 300 years ago. Albert Close is speaking from the beginning of the 20th century to the beginning of the 17th, as we see here. Those 300 years he talks about. The Puritans in the Church of England and in the nonconformist bodies in this 20th century are fighting the same old battle over again with the High Church Romanizing party. The High Church party are responsible for the Kikuyu controversy of 1914 AD, which is the same question the Puritans fought and died for 300 years ago. History repeats itself. You can take this from History Unveiling Prophecy from Henry Grattan Guinness. Now in 1631, 20,000 Protestants massacred in Magdeburg, Germany. That is Eastern Germany for the people who don't know Magdeburg. And Brother Max, who has translated Romanism and the Reformation from English into German, and that book is out on my archive.org library, he lives in Magdeburg.
Wow.
1641 AD. Romish conspiracy in Ireland. Massacre of 40,000 Protestants on the 23rd of October in 1641. Romanist bishops incited their people by every means in their power to massacre the Protestants. So they had in 1641 an Irish St. Bartholomew massacre. 1647, the Westminster Assembly of 100 divines declare in their confession of faith that the Pope is Antichrist in the following words, quote, "There is no other head of the Church but the Lord Jesus Christ, nor can the Pope of Rome in any sense be the head thereof, but is that Antichrist, that man of sin and son of perdition, that exalted himself in the church against Christ and all that is called God." Unquote. This is a little bit changed in changed words what Paul already wrote in the 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. This confession of faith ratified by English Parliament in AD 1649. This agrees exactly with the teaching of Luther, Knox, Calvin, Tyndale, Latimer, Ridley, and other great reformers, yet our 20th century theological professors and ministers as a whole now deny this application. Now, let me just go into a short little comment here on the Westminster Confession. When you have the Westminster Confession, what we just read is actually, I give you that, a quite interesting little quote stating that the papacy is the Antichrist. No doubt about that. But the problem for the rest is that with this Westminster Confession also you have 39 articles. I don't know if I have a picture of them here. And these 39 articles, when you read them, you should really understand that those are full of Roman leaven yet. So even though they state, no, I don't have a picture of that. So even though they state in the beginning what I just read to you, this wonderful quote, yeah, "There is no other head of the church but the Lord Jesus Christ, nor can the Pope of Rome in any sense be the head thereof, but is that Antichrist, that man of sin and son of perdition, that exalteth himself in the church against Christ and all that is called God." Even though they state this, they still perform sacraments and they still have other parts of Roman Catholic leaven in the 39 articles of confession in the Westminster Confession, and therefore I say you have to be careful and study them for yourselves. I tried doing that one time, but I just didn't have the time to go through it. I probably will do in the future, and then we can compare these 39 articles of the Westminster Confession against the Bible, word by word, and then you will see that there still is a lot of Roman Catholic leaven in there. Do you have any remarks on that, Bret?
Nothing other than just sending over a quick picture I found on the internet for you. That might do it. Maybe.
Okay.
39 articles. I just thought I'd quick pull that up. But yeah, that's interesting. You know, these different points of history. Yeah, there's a lot to consider here. And you're about 7 hours ahead of me, so I have the work of trying to catch up to you every morning.
I know.
Yeah. So crack the whip.
Yeah, I'm still glad you're there anyway, and we can do this.
No,
today.
I know. It's just I'm trying to be a benefit for our listeners.
Well, that's a good picture. I didn't have it. You just put it up. That's nice. So we've shown that. Okay. So Rome's two remarkable medals. This confession of faith ratified by English Parliament in 1649 and so on. We just read this. So here are two remarkable medals. Out of thine own mouth will I judge thee. Struck by Pope Leo XIII in 1825. Leo XII, sorry, yeah, because Leo XIII, that could not be. Leo
and then
XIII
struck
was
by Innocent the 11th.
In 1680, in 1680.
Yeah,
that's the other one here. But Leo XIII was the successor of Pope Pius IX. And Pope Leo XII was the predecessor of Pope Pius IX.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting how the papacy always uses those numbers like that in succession, don't they?
Yeah.
They have Leos, and then they have John Paul's.
And Gregory's, and Pius, and Benedict's.
That's really interesting. We had Pope John, then we had Pope Paul, then we had Pope John Paul I, and then the second. Yeah. 33 days of John Paul I. What's up with that?
Actually, we just had John Paul. He became the first after the second one called himself John Paul II, right?
Good point, Jörg.
That's like Pope Francis. He doesn't.
3 days?
Yeah. Pope Francis doesn't call him Pope Francis the First. He calls himself Pope Francis. But if there comes another Pope Francis II, then he will automatically be called Francis the First. But he's the first to use this name.
Isn't he already called Francis the First? I've seen that.
I don't know. It's not correct if you do so, because he was the first one to use that name.
That's true.
That's like, when you have a son and you call him Bret Jr.
Right.
That is Bret the Second, right?
I guess so.
Therefore, you are not called Bret the First. You are just called Bret.
Yeah, right. Gotcha.
So when they use the name for the very first time, it's just their name. But when another comes with the same name, but putting a second behind it, of course, the other one has to be named the first one, because otherwise you can't keep them apart, because you just have the name. So then you put one behind the first one to say that is the original one. And you have that with Leo and with Benedict and with Pius and with Innocent and all these papal names and all these papal numbers and everything. Yeah. So I was just a little bit missed there when I read the 13th in 1825. I said that cannot be. No, it was the 12th in 1825, and Leo XIII took over from 1874 or 5 on, after the death of Pius IX, and ruled until the next pope came. And that was, I think, Pius X.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but we are not
right.
here to speak about the successive order of the popes. We are here to look at the two medals. This one, the first one here, is struck by Innocent XI in 1680. Papal Rome extending to the world her intoxicating cup disguised as a sacrament. This is what this picture is all about. Yeah. Revelation chapter 14. We read. Revelation chapter 17, verse 4, we read, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication." This is what this woman, of course, represents. In chapter 17, verse 18, "And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth," Rome. The great city of Rome can be seen in the background of this medal. So then you, of course, need a better picture than this one to see that in the background you can see Rome, and here you see the woman with the cup. And then we have this medal struck by Pope Leo XII in 1825. Papal Rome, the woman seated on the globe or many waters extending to the world her intoxicating cup of apostasy and idolatry. Revelation chapter 17 verse 1 says, Come hither, and I will show unto thee the great judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And in verse 4, And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Now, Bret, if you want to, and have the time, you can maybe in the meantime look up if you find pictures of those medals on the internet, and then we can blend them into our reading a little bit later on, if you want to, if that's possible. In the meantime, the author continues to say, in 1680 AD, Pope Innocent XI in 1680 struck the medal shown on page 110, so which we just spoke about, representing the Church of Rome as a woman, standing at Rome, extending to the nations of the earth in her right hand a cup containing her sacrament, the host. In 1825, Pope Leo XII struck another, representing the Church of Rome as a woman seated on the water-covered globe, extending the same cup of abominations to the nations. These medals may both be seen in the British Museum and in the Vatican in Rome. The Spirit of God foresaw that this church would employ these symbols and revealed to St. John over 1800 years ago from the time of the writing of this book, Out of thine own mouth will I judge thee. The irradiating rays of light shooting from the cup symbolize the central doctrine of the Church of Rome, the pretended quote-unquote real presence of Christ in the sacrament of that church. We are talking about the sacrament in the Eucharist. The Spirit of God in this verse emphatically pronounces the contents of the cup Rome offers an abomination and not a sacrament. By the way, the word sacrament, you cannot find it in the Bible. Think about that. Here, therefore, we have what God thinks of the doctrine of transubstantiation. It's an abomination. The only thing that these two have in common is the ending Asian. That's all. It is an insult to the atonement and finished work of Christ on Calvary. Now we are speaking about an interesting point that I spoke about already a few times, namely the revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685. Before we go into that, I just want to show you a picture of the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, one that I used many times during my readings. Let's see, we can use this one. Revocation of the Edict of Nantes. This is Père Lachaise, and this is King Henry XIV, King Louis XIV, of France, the Sun King. 1685, the revocation of the Edict of Nantes on October 22nd, 1685. Cruel and deadly papal persecution in France. 400,000 Protestants flee from their country and take refuge in England, Holland, Prussia, Switzerland, and over the Big Sea in America, followed by the War of Cevennes or Kennesaw War. Here we reach the beginning of the last act of the great papal tragedy and the beginning of the great chain of events which brought about retribution. Louis XIV sat on the throne of France. At his side was Madame de Maintenon, his paramour. Behind her stood the Jesuit confessor, Father Lachaise. Behind him, again the Pope, and his inspirer, Satan himself. The dreadful massacre of St. Bartholomew in AD 1572, although a tremendous blow, did not entirely crush Protestantism in France. A 1/12 part of the entire population was still attached to the Reformed religion. Henry IV, on ascending the throne of France, issued in AD 1598 the Edict of Nantes, which placed Protestants on the same footing as Roman Catholics in regard to civil rights and the free exercise of their religion. The Huguenots soon began to recover from the effects of past persecutions, but the gleam of prosperity was of short duration. Let me put the picture in here again, and we can look at that in the meantime while the reading. You let me know, Bret, when you got the picture of the medals?
Oh, they've been sitting there.
Okay.
I brought them in right away.
Yeah,
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, it's okay, but if you don't tell me, I don't know, eh? So.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. You can just hit the arrow key. I didn't notice that with Skype. That is so cool. Wow.
So this is Innocent the 11th or whatever it said. This is his medal, and here you can see it much better.
Right. Yeah.
This is Rome in the back, because here you can see St. Peter's. Yeah. This is very clear to see.
And then
this is Rome.
Transubstantiation.
And this is the woman. Yeah. And this is the woman holding the cup with the fornication.
The false sacrifice.
The false sacrifice. Yeah. So this is a much better picture than we just had in the book.
Sacrifice of the Mass. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is the medal of Pope Pius Pope Leo XII.
Right.
And here again we have the woman with but this is another one than the one in the book, isn't it?
Right. No, I think isn't that the one? Or is that the wrong one?
This looks a little bit different here, doesn't it? No, it can be this. Yeah, this is so hard to see. Yeah?
I think it is. Hold on. My Skype connection's really bad. Oh, everything's blurry now. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Skype just has to adjust to a smaller image size. I think my mother must be using the internet, so no big deal.
I think it is that, but in the PDF it is very hard to see. And here you can see the papal crown on the bottom. You see the woman and the rays of sun going from that woman. Of course, you have the triangle or the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top. You have the Jesuitical sun rays coming down on that woman, which is actually here looking like St. Peter's too. And this is the medal that Pope or Antichrist Leo XII struck in 1825. Thank you very much, Bret, for these pictures. It's nice to...
my pleasure. Quick and easy, man. Quick and easy. I just didn't want to interrupt you because you were on a roll, and I thought, as soon as you bring it up, I'll bring it up. So
good. So there's an interesting story. Let's see if the author covers that also about the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. Let's just see what we learn here. So the Huguenots soon began to recover from the effects of past persecutions in the end of the 16th century, but the gleam of prosperity was of short duration. With the murder of Henry IV in AD 1610, it passed away. So that is only for 12 years. Oppression and injustice gradually increased until under Louis XIV, who came to the throne in AD 1643, and then it became intolerable. The terrible statute of Louis XIV of June 1681 AD brought the smoldering fire of persecution to a head. This law authorized the wholesale conversion to the Roman Catholic Church of all the children of Protestants throughout France. Children of 7 years and over were torn from their homes in spite of the frantic protests of parents and sent to nunneries or schools to be immured until conversion was complete. But the parents and elder brothers and sisters still remained Protestants and met in Protestant houses of worship. King Louis XIV determined to stop this by a new method, by dragonnades, by quartering the soldiers of his vast army in the homes of the Protestants. These soldiers were unscrupulous, ungodly, superstitious, lustful, intolerant, and ready instruments for any abomination which their quote-unquote Holy Mother Church should call upon them to practice upon the hated heretics. These sanguinary wretches were given leave to do as they would in the houses with the woman as well as the men. They stabled their horses in their houses, broke the furniture, and devoured the provisions. They tied the fathers, sons, husbands, and brothers hand and foot, and violated the mothers, wives, and daughters and sisters in their presence. They prevented the wretched Huguenots, heretics, from closing their eyes in sleep by walking them up and down the rooms all night long until they renounced their Protestantism. And these horrors were practiced throughout all of France. In these a hundred other ways the soldiers tormented their unhappy victims until they scarcely knew what they were doing. From Guyenne and Upper Languedoc the dragonnades extended to the provinces of Saintonge, Aunis and Poitou on the west, and Vivarais on the east. Next came the turn to the province of Lyonnais and the Cevennes and the lower Languedoc of Provence and of Gex. Later, still the rest of the kingdom became a prey to the hideous work of the booted mission, as it was called. It extended to Normandy, Burgundy, and the central provinces even so far off as Brittany, and to Paris itself. Again, this is recorded from Henry Gretton Guinness. The fatal day of the revocation was October 17th, AD 1685. The first article revoked all legislation favorable to the Huguenots. The second forbade all gatherings of Protestants for the services of their religion. The next three concerned Protestant ministers. All were commanded to leave France within 15 days. The remainder prescribed that all children of Protestants should in future be baptized by the parish priest and brought up in Roman Catholic religion. All Protestant subjects were forbidden to leave the kingdom or to export their goods and chattels, and all Protestant churches throughout France were to be shut or destroyed. Nothing but ruins remained. The pastors were exiled, and the flocks forbidden to follow them. The entire Protestant population, the noblest and best in the land, lay crushed under the iron heel of the relentless papal persecutor. Now, the great exodus from France, 1685. I think before we go into this, I want to do a little search, if you allow me.
Please, go ahead, Jörg.
Because I read something in the book from Alexander Hislop. Well, I read that book in German, but I have that book in English too, The Two Babylons, Alexander Hislop. Let me just open that up and do a little search. And let's see if I can come up with this quite fast, that we can embed this in the reading today. This is here on this page. Let's just see. The revocation of the Edict of Nantes. Yeah, this is... I think this is not it. Oh, it is. Okay, then I have to look that somewhere there where we found this right here. No, let's just look for shares. Okay. No, not non-shares, just shares. So I just need to find that name, the infamous. Okay, here the story of Alexander Hislop goes here. When they have an influence on power. In the famous letter of Père Lachaise, the confessor of Louis XIV of France, giving an account on the method which he adopted to gain the consent of that licentious monarch to the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. So this is the place I was looking for. So listen carefully. This is why the king revoked the Edict of Nantes. In the famous letter of Père Lachaise, the confessor of Louis XIV of France, giving an account of the method which he adopted to gain the consent of that licentious monarch, speaking of Louis XIV, to the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, by which such cruelties were inflicted on his innocent Huguenot subjects as we just read in the book, we see how the fear of the scales of St. Michael operated in bringing about the desired result. Many a time since, says the accomplished Jesuit, referring to an atrocious sin of which the king had been guilty, many a time since, when I have had him at confession, I have shook hell about his ears, and made him sigh, fear, and tremble before I would give him absolution. By this I saw that he had still an inclination to me, and was willing to be under my government. So I set the baseness of the action before him by telling the whole story, and how wicked it was, and that it could not be forgiven till he had done something good action to balance that bad action and expiate the crime. Whereupon he at last asked me what he must do. The king in desperation asks his confessor, Father de la Chaise, what must I do to receive the absolution from the sin I committed? I told him, this is La Chaise speaking, I told him that he must root out all heretics from his kingdom. This was the quote-unquote good action to be cast into the scale of St. Michael the Archangel to balance his crime. The king, wicked as he was, sore against his will consented, the good action was cast in, the heretics were extirpated, and the king was absolved. But yet the absolution was not such but that, when he went the way of all the earth, there was still much to be cast in before the scales could fairly be adjusted. Thus, paganism and popery alike make merchandise of the souls of men, as we can read in Revelation chapter 18, verse 13. I'm not going to continue this. This is a wonderful book, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop.
Yes,
but
no doubt.
I wanted to give you the insight. How did the confessor Father La Chaise, Père La Chaise, how did he in the world succeed in, making the king revoke the Edict of Nantes? Here we have another picture of the Edict of Nantes from Henry IV, how it is put in there. And here we have a plaque that is put in Nantes, Place de l'Édit de Nantes. So this is the place or the court of the Edict of Nantes, the Edict of Tolerance promulgated by King Henry IV on the 13th of April 1598. So in remembrance there in France is this plaque still today. But people don't know what that is all about. So I just wanted to inform you about what tactics the confessor Father La Chaise used to convince the king to revoke the Edict of Nantes and to extirpate the enemies of that country, which are, in the sight of the Jesuits, of course, the Protestant believers in the form of Huguenots and others. And this is why you have this picture, which is of course only imagination. He didn't put the gun at him, but the point is the gun, and here's the cross coming out of the Roman Catholic Church. This is a Jesuit, and the tactics and the works, how this Jesuit worked the king to get from the king what he wanted him to do. And you just read it together with me in The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. That is how we achieved it. That is something that Albert Close in his book did not cover, and I wanted to cover that with you. I wanted you to know this. And I think that it is quite fitting where we read about in this little time. Yeah? We are going to speak about the Great Exodus from France. That's something for the next broadcast, if it's all right with you, Bret. I think we have come close to an hour. Of course. And
yes.
we can go with the Great Exodus next time. Interesting, of course.
That's a familiar title there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, interesting that we are reading a book, The Great Exodus, or The Time of the End by Henry Grattan Guinness. But we are speaking here of the Great Exodus because hundreds of thousands of Huguenots were killed after the Edict of Nantes was revoked, and hundreds of thousands went out of the country. And one of them, in my humble opinion, as far as I researched this, was Limborch. I don't know his first name right now.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and Limborch is the author of the book History of the Inquisition. Philip von Limborch.
Yeah, that's it.
And he lived in Netherlands and wrote that book in 1692. That's 7 years after the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. And then he wrote the book.
Fresh. That's really fresh.
That's fresh. And then he wrote that book in Latin, and it was translated into English in 1731 by a guy called Chandler. And that is a very interesting book, and I started reading that on my second YouTube channel. I have about 40 videos uploaded there, but then I stopped because nobody's interested in watching those videos, and it is a very hard book to read. I will probably pick it up in the future again, and here and there then release a few others. I have read that book now for the third part because it has 750 pages or something, and I'm up to 240 or something, so I have to get back into that. But the history is that book was written by Philip von Limborch, who was a Huguenot that fled France and then wrote the history of the Inquisition, and that was then translated in the 18th century to the English language, and I'm reading that on my channel. And that is because of the persecution of the Huguenots. Hundreds of thousands left the country and hundreds of thousands were killed in the country. It was a genocide that nobody ever talks about. Yeah, and that's it for today, at least what's regarding me, and I will of course leave the closing remarks to my brother Bret Norman here.
Thank you, Jörg. Yeah, excellent to have this history being, going through it. Would you call that systematically in time?
Yes, and, systematically, chronologically.
And chronologically.
And what I appreciate so much is that we can take another book and go into a little deeper study, like when I put out the book of Alexander Hislop here, and we can combine those things and read a little bit from this and a little bit from that and go a little bit deeper into something the one author starts to mention and the other one goes a little bit deeper with extra information. That's what I appreciate so much about this.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. No doubt. And not only that, but we are doing this study in the spirit of that coming of the Lord of our Jesus Christ. When he comes back to take his people out of this this earth that is destroying itself, these principles that are at war with one another. And I was just telling my mom, we watched that movie, Luther, with
Ralph Fiennes.
Johanna. Yeah, Ralph Fiennes. Was that it?
Yeah, from 2003, that movie.
Yeah, we watched that last night again, and that was great. It's just a reminder of there are people that died to give us our Bible and to give us this history. So why should we keep it under wraps? Why should we ignore it? Why should we be ignorant of the devil's devices? Because that's what the Bible's telling us, that we should not be ignorant of his devices. We should know his devices. We should know the way he crafts things. And by that, we can see the problems coming down the road. We can take caution in our lives. We can route out all of these instances that might cause problems in the future. And that's really important.
This is the movie you saw, right?
Yes. Fantastic movie.
Joseph Fiennes. It's not Ralph Fiennes. Sorry, Joseph Fiennes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't get the name of all these actors. But,
no, neither do I. But it's
matter.
It's by the protecting hand of God, I think, that this movie is still preserved until today, and that everybody can watch it. Even though it is a Hollywood movie, let me tell you, this is one of the most wonderful Luther movies ever made. The only thing that is missing is that... It's just a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that is missing, I think, is that Luther says that the Pope is the Antichrist.
Exactly.
But
if he would have done that...
Yeah, therefore you have this German series from 1983 from Eastern Germany, and there in part 4, Luther says that the papacy is the Antichrist.
Yeah, that's right. That's amazing. That is amazing in of itself, because where have you ever heard that before? I mean, it's only in the older books. Yep. That's it. It's the only place we can find it. And, it's interesting how here in America they've routed that out for fear of offending, anyone in particular. People get offended by that kind of thing. But, that's just tough as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. No,
the truth doesn't care who she offends.
No, it doesn't. Nope. That's right. Yep. And with that, Jörg, should we end it up for today?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and checking us out, and hope you got something out of it. Feel free to leave any comment you wish. I do moderate the comments on my channel. I'm sure Jörg doesn't, but it doesn't matter. We all got to choose our own battles, so to speak, and that's the way I've chosen to deal with it at the moment, just because I'm so busy with work and I don't want my comment section to get all flooded with all kinds of garbage. And so in the spirit of our Lord Jesus Christ, we end the broadcast today, and hope that you read your Bibles and get something out of it, because time's going to keep on ticking here. We're going to get closer and closer to who knows what. I can't predict the future, and neither can Jörg, I think, but we can certainly see the signs of the times, can we not? So in that, we'll catch up with you next time. God bless. Bye-bye for now.
From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Do ye think that the Scripture saith in vain, the Spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? But he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted, and mourn, and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to heaviness. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother, and judgeth his brother, speaketh evil of the law, and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? Go to now, ye that say today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy, and sell, and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor, that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire.